I first saw this guy in the 1988 Olympics, and he was beating this Korean guy in the gold medal fight from pillar to post. Obviously, he got robbed. They gave the gold medal to his opponent, and being that the robbery was so terrible, it put him on my radar. So I wanted to see how he would be as a pro. Little did I know, I was watching probably one of the greatest fighters who ever lived. Roy Jones Jr. wasn't a fighter. He was a superhero. I tell my son he's probably the only fighter that could have been in the Avengers, like in real life. No, real talk. Roy Jones had a 10-year stretch where he never lost a round. I think he's the only fighter who went one round without even being hit. That's never happened before. He went from junior middleweight all the way up to heavyweight and won a world title. That's never happened before. I only think Bob Fitzsimmons did that, or came close to it. And yeah, he couldn't be touched. He had speed, he had power, he had footwork, ring IQ. He was the perfect fighter, and the punches was coming at all kinds of angles. Nobody could touch him. So, today we're going to give him his flowers. It's the incomparable Roy Jones Jr. In his prime, that's the greatest fighter I've ever seen. As always, guys, like, share, and subscribe, and comment. Support the channel. And don't be afraid to donate to the Cash App. More donations means more content.
Boxing became so special to me because as a kid, I was a constant agitator. So watching my father be so enthused by watching Muhammad Ali fight Joe Frazier, I was really taken by that because my father was so into the boxing. And Muhammad Ali was doing exactly what I love to do, which was aggravate Joe Frazier while he beat him. So I was like, wow, this is pretty interesting. If somebody ever taught me how to use my hands, I can do that because my mindset is the exact same as his mindset. I just don't know how to throw the punches yet. So if somebody teaches me how to throw the punches, I probably could do that. And that's what boxing meant to me right off top.
From Pensacola, Florida, a future Hall of Famer, the former middleweight world champion, former super middleweight world champion, former light heavyweight world champion, and former heavyweight champion of the world, Roy Jones Jr.
The word impossible for Roy Jones Jr. is a word that I think I take it the opposite. So if somebody tell me something is impossible, guess what? That's exactly what I think I'll go try to do. So if they tell me it's impossible for a guy to be at the Olympics as a junior middleweight and become heavyweight champion of the world, guess what? I think that's what I'll go try to do because I love to be challenged. So when you tell me something is impossible, that's what I want to go try. So when people say, there's no way he can do it again, oh yeah? And that's what the problem I have now. I have to try to fight impossible every day because me and the word impossible, we battle every day. Every time I have to make myself forget about impossible because if I don't, I'll be fighting again because in my mind, what they tell me I can't do is exactly what I want to go do.
Can't be touched, can't be stopped, can't be moved, can't be rocked, can't be shook. We hot. When will you niggas learn? Came to get crunk, came to bring life, came to get started, came to get right. Turn down the music, turn up my mic. When will you niggas learn?
I remember my first amateur fight very vividly. There was nobody there in my weight class. I was 10 years old, 79 pounds. It was on Pensacola Beach, Labor Day weekend, 1979. And they asked me, did I want to fight that guy? I said, he's bigger than you and he's older. I was only 10, he was like 14. So yeah, I'll fight him. So little did I know, and this is why my life is so different and so fun to me, is because God has ways of showing us things and preparing us for things that we never know are coming. By me sacrificing and giving up that much weight at the age that I was only 10. And I felt like I still could beat this kid. And this kid had fights before. So we gloved up. They said, do you want headgear? And when I started boxing, headgear was optional. I said, no, I don't want the headgear. So when I beat this kid, I won a blue trophy. That was my very first fight. And from then, that was the first trophy I ever received. I played football, never got a trophy. So when I got the trophy, it turned me on. I loved trophies. So from that point, I started wanting to pursue boxing all the time. I wanted to fight all the time. Sometimes we ups and downs, we would fight, then we wouldn't fight for a long time, and the long drought would bother me. But I wanted to become a person with a lot of trophies, which I did. And then, as a kid, I started to see, in '76, I think I saw the '76 Olympics. And I saw Sugar Ray Leonard, Leo Randolph, Howard Davis Jr., and I really saw how the people were, the fans were cheering for them. USA, USA. And I was like, wow, they're representing the whole country in boxing. I gotta do that one day. So that became my dream as a young kid, was to go to the Olympics and represent my country. And you gotta remember, this is not about pay. This is about love, honor, respect, and wanting to show that your country is a superior country. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, I want to do that one day. I want to represent my country one day. And that became the biggest dream to me as a young kid. I think I was 7. And in the '76, yes, I was 7. So that really blew my mind, but it gave me a desire and a hunger to want to be that person one day that could represent my country. So when I got to the Olympic Games in 1988, I sacrificed 9 years of my life to get there. And by the grace of God, I made it, because '88 was a really tough year for me. I lost in the Amateur Boxing Federation tournament to the #1 guy. I lost in the National Golden Gloves tournament to a guy that was ranked pretty high. And I get to the Olympic trials, they have 8 people. 6 of them are winners. 1 is a inter-service champion runner-up, and 1 is an at-large guy, a guy who they thought was having a bad year. But they rank you from according to what tournament you won over to the at-large guy. The at-large guy is the last guy. So 1 through 8, I was the at-large guy, the last ranked guy to go to the Olympics trials. When I got to the Olympic trials, I told them all they should have prayed harder that I didn't get there, because if God put me there, He wants me to win it. And that's just what I felt. So when I got to the Olympic trials, I blasted them all. I only had one hand. This hand was in tremendous pain. But I blasted them, and I had to beat Frankie Lyles again, who I had lost to in the Amateur Boxing Federation tournament earlier that year. So I had to beat him twice. After that, I got to the Olympics. The Olympics was going pretty smooth at first. I had the quickest knockout of the first fight. I think I fought Malaysian guy the first night, and I fought a Seoul South Korean guy the last night. And the Seoul South Korean guy was a nice person, but I beat him probably just as bad as I beat everybody else. And matter of fact, I probably hit him more than I hit anybody else. And they robbed me and gave him my gold medal, and I got a silver medal. For me, that was the most tragic thing that could have ever happened to me, because at the time, I felt like I had sacrificed 9 years of my young life. I had no childhood because of boxing. So I sacrificed 9 years to win a gold medal, and to have them rob it, just take it from me, was the worst thing that I could have possibly seen happening. Yet, 2 or 3 days later, I started to realize that, this is why, again, you have to have faith in God. No way could the worst thing that I thought ever happened to me turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. But it did. So that's why when you're going through ups and downs in life, you can't always look at the bad things as bad things. Sometimes they're learning lessons. Sometimes they're learning curves. Sometimes they're meant to be inspirational, to add to that desire. In that case, that was meant to be inspirational, to add to my desire to want to be the best, because they gave me the Val Barker Cup, which means I was the best fighter at the Olympics, but I don't have a gold medal. How contradictory is that? The best fighter there doesn't have a gold medal. But what it did is because I'm the kind of person that I don't want to win unless I win fair. If I don't win fair, I don't want it. So because they gave me the Val Barker Cup, I didn't know at the time, but God knew, that that would make me go out and try to prove now that I was the best, not only at the Olympics, but in the whole world. So giving me the Val Barker Cup just added more to the fire. Now, like I say, it's almost impossible because it's basically contradictory on the IOC part. He don't win a gold medal, but he's the best boxer here. How does the best boxer here not get a gold medal when ain't nobody beat him? It's not like he had a bad night and a guy outpointed him, but we still know he was the best. No, he completely humiliated this guy, and he gets the Val Barker Cup, but he has no gold medal. And then 32 years later, they still haven't fixed it. So it was crazy, but that was my first, well, not my first, but that was one of my biggest lessons in learning how powerful God is, because only God could have took that negative and turned it into the positive that he turned it into for me.
Roy Jones, the first of 3 Americans to go for the gold today. Later on, we'll see Andrew Maynard and Riddick Bowe, and Roy Jones severely outclassed his opponent Park Si-hun of Korea as we await the decision.
And Jones scored from outside, he scored from inside, and he scored from the middle distance. Almost anywhere he chose to stand and give angles, he outboxed, outpunched, outsped, and out-talented Park. Well, if he doesn't win the gold off this, then I think there's something rotten in Korea, because that is absolutely one of the most dominant things I've seen.
The winner is on point 3-2 in the blue corner.
Well, there it is. Park Si-hun has stolen the bout.
Transitioning from amateur to professional was very easy for me, mainly because my style already was geared around a professional style. So I don't think I ever really adhered to the amateur system. It was always me thinking I was going to be a pro fighter one day after the Olympics, because after you got older and start trying to go to the Olympics, you realize that the guys that don't make it to the Olympics, they turn pro and they become that year's pro class. So you have a pro class of 84, guy that didn't make the Olympics was Mike Tyson, was the biggest name. But Mike Tyson did more than all the guys that even made the Olympics. As a matter of fact, he beat the 2 guys, the heavyweight and the super heavyweight, that made the Olympics in 84 as a pro. So you start to learn then that just because they don't make the Olympics doesn't mean things. Some of the guys who don't make the Olympics become better pros. So for instance, Mark Breland was probably the best amateur on the team in 84. But Mark Breland didn't turn out to be the best pro. Pernell Whitaker had a much better career. Evander Holyfield had a much better career. I mean, it's just a lot of people had, Virgil Hill even, they had much better careers than Mark Breland, but Mark Breland was the most celebrated amateur boxer in the United States, probably of all time. He got a gold medal in 84, but he didn't pan out to be a good pro. So if your style wasn't oriented to be a style that went on and carried you through the professional rankings, your style really wasn't that good. I had a good friend of mine on my team named Kenny Gould. Kenny Gould was a master of the point system in amateur boxing. I think Kenny Gould might have ended up with a bronze medal in the Olympics in '88, but Kenny Gould never could make it as a professional because he was too locked in on the amateur style. He couldn't make that conversion. For me, that conversion was very easy.
We get ready for our first HBO look at Roy Jones, the outstanding boxer of the 1988 Seoul Olympics when he was jobbed by bad scoring out of a gold medal. He has fought in obscurity in his professional career. How good is he? What's at stake for him tonight?
He seems to have it all, Jim. He has great hand speed, solid punching power, puts his punches together well, and has great confidence. But he's fighting a tall, experienced fighter, a good boxer, great lateral movement. It could be a problem. Let's see if he can solve it.
Left hook landed on Harris's chin, but it's not as powerful as the earlier left hook and right cross bombs that Jones has been throwing. That one wobbled Harris just a little bit. If there's any weakness at all, Gil, he doesn't look to me as though he commits to the jab very often. He could make it more effective.
Right, he just doesn't set guys up with that left hand, but with the power he has and the speed. And he's been so effective, I guess he feels he doesn't have to throw a snappy left jab.
Wobbled Harris again with a left hook there. Left and a right as he backs up and moves away from Harris. Another right cross. Harris in trouble again. Can Harris make it out around 4? Not without going down.
That's it.
And Tony Orlando has seen enough. So we're looking at a potential all-time great, right?
Well, all-time great is a little bit in the distance. I mean, but right now he looks that way.
Let's go up to ring announcer Michael Buffer for the official particulars.
Ladies and gentlemen, the official time comes at the end of the 4th round. The winner by knockout victory. And now his record 20-0, 19 KOs, and he owns the WBC Continental America Super Middleweight Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, Roy Jones Jr.
The very first title I won as a professional was the WBC Intercontinental Super Middleweight title. That was my very first belt. I was so proud of that belt because I always wanted a green belt. I won all the belts, but I definitely wanted a green one because WBC was hot and it was a green one. So I always aimed at that. And I thought that I would probably fight Julian Jackson to get it first. And so when I got an opportunity to fight for the Intercontinental title, I was like, yes, this get me ranked in the WBC. Maybe I can fight for the WBC belt. So I fought Percy Harris in Atlantic City. I wasn't a super middleweight yet. I was still fighting middleweight. But to fight at 164 catch weight for the 168-pound title, I said, why not? So I fought him, beat him, won that one. Then I think my first world WBC title was against probably Mike McCallum at light heavyweight. I think that's the first time I won the world WBC belt. My style is very different and very creative, yes, very unique. But the way it was created was a lot of things. You know, first, my father taught me a very good foundation. Everything about footwork, I learned hours and hours and hours in. Everything about punching correctly, I learned hours and hours and hours in. Everything about defense, I learned hours and hours and hours in. Every aspect of boxing, counter-punching, rolling, slipping, dipping, everything. I have hours and hours on top of hours of doing it repeatedly over and over and over again. As a kid, I used to like cockfighting. I like anything that fight. I used to catch insects and make them fight. Praying mantises and make them fight. I used to catch anything I could that would fight and make them fight and watch because I was fascinated with fighting. Never fought dogs because I liked my dogs too much, but everything else, I wanted to see it fight. So I learned about the roosters and learned that they naturally fight. I started watching. And what I really wanted to know was what made one rooster better than the other, because they're all just roosters, you think. So obviously if they one beating the other, something has to make them better. So I started also studying what made those better. And I learned about the feints, different things they do, to hold him, then attack him, feint him, make him punch, then attack him. I learned different things like that, and I was always an animal kid. I always loved animals. So I had a Doberman Pinscher when I was a little kid. He would always kill snakes. And I was always amazed at how this dog kills snakes, because the Doberman Pinscher doesn't have a tolerance for pain like a pit bull has. My pit bull, if a snake bite him, he don't care. He just grab the snake and shake it anyway. Now he may be sick for a few days if the snake's poisonous, but if it's not a poisonous snake, he don't care. He don't care if it's poison or not. He just run right in and grab it and just shake it up. But he'll get killed like that. That Doberman Pinscher, he couldn't tolerate pain. So he would never get bit by a snake. He would sit there and aggravate and aggravate and aggravate and aggravate, aggravate, make the snake strike. Once the snake strikes, then he attacks. And shakes him and throws him before he hit the ground and gets him, and it's over with. But I learned that when a guy can punch, the best time to hit a guy is when he's trying to punch you. Because that's what that dog would do. He wouldn't attack that snake till that snake reached at him. Then he make that snake pay. So that's the most vulnerable time to catch a guy. So things like that made me unique, because I learned how to take nature, which is what God gave me, and combine that with the technique that I learned to make a complete overall fighter. It's a big difference in style with me, or Holyfield, Mike Tyson in that era, the Muhammad Ali days, the Sugar Ray Leonard days. The biggest thing is that we had more technique than conditioning. Nowadays, fighters are more into strength and conditioning than technique. How that happened was people started getting lazy with technique. So they would have technique, like you have a lot of guys that would have a technique, but they wouldn't be conditioned. So they come to the ring, they look good for a few rounds, then they die off. The better conditioned guy win the fight. So what started happening was a lot of guys that had technique were getting beat by guys that didn't have the same technique, but had better conditioning. So what happens? Boxing transitioned from a skill sport to a better conditioned sport. So now people forget about technique, but they work on more on condition. Condition becomes the priority. So if you look at it right now, Tyson Fury is not the best technical guy, but his condition is good for his size. So he beats Wilder. But Wilder not really very technical either. But because Fury is bigger and Fury has a big heart, he can take the little bit of technique that he does have and overcome Wilder because he's in just as good a shape, but he has a little bit more technique. You understand? Wilder's one of these guys who is strong, but he focuses more on power. Back in the old days, everybody had power naturally anyway. And don't get it wrong, some of it is due to the food that we eat now, the chemicals that we are exposed to. All of those things have a lot to do with the condition of the fighters today. So now people more trying to take care of their bodies and get themselves in better condition than they are worried about technique. So a lot of guys, even when I train right now, they come to my gym and I make them spend time, repetitious time like I did, on technique. They don't like it. They just want to beat bags, beat hand mitts, spar. Well, how can you do all this if you don't know the real technique that it takes to do it? So that's what's happening. We're missing all that because as soon as you come to the gym, first thing you want to do is hit something. In our day, it wasn't like that. You knew what kind of fighter you were, you knew how to jab, you knew how to throw a right hand, you knew how to throw every punch, you knew how to counter every punch, you knew how to defend every punch, you knew boxing from here, then here. Now you learn it from here. Legends, they do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. The champions, they get to be champions, but they don't last long. They get to be champions, but they don't do it the right way. They get to be champions, but they have too many close back and forth that we ain't sure what happened. They don't dominate. The legends find a way to dominate even in adversity. So the legends like Mike Tyson, yeah, late he lost, but when he was dominating, wasn't nobody touching him. Pernell Whitaker, when he was dominating, wasn't nobody touching him. Sugar Ray Leonard, when he was dominating, the only other person that could touch him was somebody also great like him, which was Roberto Duran. But those are legends. It takes one legend to touch another. The rest of them can't touch him, not in his prime. So legends are built because they can come back and do it over and over and over again. Only time you may see them struggle is against another legend, not just another ordinary joke. That don't happen. When I was a kid watching Muhammad Ali, he would always make rhymes, joking rhyme, but he would make rhymes about people, even with the float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That's why they called me Muhammad Ali. Same thing, he was rapping, just not putting the music to it and not doing complete songs. So it's like when he sets a bar, when the greatest set a bar, the reason they set that bar is because those that follow him supposed to either reach that bar or supersede that bar. If you don't reach that bar, then he did no good. And he didn't do that for no reason. He didn't do that to waste his time. So he set the bar where he started making rhymes about people, about things, about fights. Sometimes he make a rhyme about what round he gonna end the fight in. He made all types of rhymes. So me knowing that, when I got older, I realized rap music was a form of expression, was a way to express yourself. So I said, wow, if Muhammad Ali could express himself in a few lines like that, I think I can take it a step further and do a whole song. As a matter of fact, why not make my own song that I come to the ring with? So I started trying to do it. And it grew and grew and developed into, y'all must have forgot. Then it grew into the can't be touched, can't be stopped. It just got real, you know? So it grew, it took what Muhammad Ali said, and I just took it and tried to take it to another level, that's all.
Joining us at the beach today is Roy Jones Jr.
One of the greatest boxers of all time. He recently beat Paul Vasquez at the age of 46, and he's got a fitness DVD coming out called 10 Rounds. Let's talk to Roy a little bit.
He's still fighting?
Yes.
Roy, how would you explain your life before boxing? What was your upbringing, your youth like?
Well, my life before boxing was a country boy. I used to raise pigs, cows, chickens, kept a dog, had a few horses. I was a country kid before I started boxing.
Can you explain to us your relationship with your father? It seems complicated. You know, he helped you a lot, he worked with you a lot, and then at one point you had to say, hey, not anymore. Like, how do you explain that relationship?
It's just different. You grow up, and once you grow up, if a person can't grow with you, then you grow away from them. My father was a great father, taught me a lot of things, taught me pretty much everything I ever learned about life. At an early age, gave me the best foundation in boxing that a person ever could give someone. But then once you get to be a grown-up, you have to learn how to treat me and respect me as a grown-up. If you can't respect me, then it's best that I leave, or I have to start fighting and doing things to get my respect. And you don't want to have to do that with your own parents, so it's best just to get away from them.
What would you say the last conversation was like about that, where you were done? Where it was the last drop in the bucket overflowed, and you're like, that's it, we're done, I can't do this anymore?
No, I had a dog that I borrowed from a friend to breed. A friend of mine let the dog loose. The dog bit my sister, but they got him off of my sister. They took her home, she was okay, didn't hurt her really bad, you know, a couple bruise marks on her arm. My father come to my house, I wasn't there, and just killed the dog. You know, and it's like, that did it for me.
So what happened after that? I mean, all of that sounds horrible. What, like, you just told him that's it? That's not, I'm the adult here, I make those choices, not you.
That's right, so I'm out, because next time you come my yard to kill something, be ready to die with it. So that was it for me.
Damn, Roy, like, I mean, that's, that you're speaking of that in a very, you know, cold, concise way, but like, it was like that? That was the end?
That was it.
When's the last time Roy Jones Jr. feared a man?
Probably when I was about 16. I was fighting in a tournament, and I saw a guy who was pretty big, looked pretty angry. I was like, whoa, this guy might be able to beat me. Didn't happen.
Well, did you ever fear your father?
Yeah, I feared my father for a long time, up until I got about 16. And when I got 16, I started realizing that, you know, I got to get away, because if I don't, something bad gonna happen.
This is kind of personal, but can you explain to us the reasons? I mean, your father was really tough on you, right?
Yeah, of course. And, you know, I've gotten, you know, it's like there have been days when they talk about abuse and all that now. I laugh at those things, and like when they got on Adrian Peterson about that, you know, it's like, I was like, really, are y'all serious? I mean, everybody can make a mistake here now. My father did that way worse than that, not making the mistake, he did it on purpose. My father was different with that. You know, I have gotten beaten 3 times in one day. You know, some of it I could have been innocent, some of it I wasn't, but still, you got beaten sometimes 3 times in that same day. I have marks on my arms now that are from beatings that I got when I was a kid. You understand me? I got real beatings. So of course that's gonna make you afraid of a person. When you're a kid and a grown-up is beating you that bad, of course you're afraid. But once you get a certain age, you say, okay, now it's time to fight back. And then when I got to that age, it was like, okay, that's enough. No, I ain't taking too much more. And then when I got grown, I was like, nah, I really ain't taking nothing.
Well, you said you feared him until you were 16. 16 is when you fought back against him?
Huh?
It was 16 when you fought back?
Well, 16, I started making my own presence. It wasn't that I was going to fight back. I wasn't going for the fight back. I was going for the kill.
What was the explanation, Roy? I mean, did you ever get one, or did you ever ask? Did you ever?
Never got one, never asked. That's the thing. You never learn to talk. See, there's a problem that a lot of parents make. If you never learn to talk to your kid and respect his opinion or at least hear his side, then you'll never learn to treat him as an adult. And that's what happened in my case. My father never learned to treat me as an adult.
Are you angry at him for that?
No,
like, do you?
Not at all. That's his loss. I mean, we don't talk now, but that's his loss. I don't want to be like that with none of my kids, but that's his loss. If you don't learn to talk to your kid as an adult, then you can't have an adult relationship with your kid. So we don't have an adult relationship because he never learned to talk to me as an adult. So it's cool. Not my loss, it's his loss.
But you don't hold the beatings against him? Like, why would you do that? Why would you do that to me?
No, I don't hold the beatings because the beatings did teach me some things. It taught me that when you do things that are wrong, there are consequences.
Roy, what can you tell us about your confrontation with Fat Joe? Do you remember the particulars about that confrontation?
No, just I don't really remember that well. I just know that, you know, we had different confrontations behind a song. I thought me and Joe was cool, and he put my name in a song in somewhat of a bad way. I was like, wow, really, that's how we gonna roll? You know, I thought we was better than that. You know, he was like, nah, it's not bad. You know, first he was like, it's just a song. I said, nah, it's just no song. Just me and you. You know, I thought we was better than that. You know, then he was like, no, you right, my bad. No, and it won't happen again. I was like, all right, we cool with that. But, you know, I ain't just, you know, I do fight for a living, and sometimes you lose it. And I think I kind of got upset because I thought he was a friend of mine. Being that was at a time that I was having a bad era in my career, it was kind of a touchy subject. So to do that and have it come from a guy who I thought or looked upon as a friend kind of bothered me. So that, once again, though, you're almost willing to die for it because I know you had guys with 55, 60 guns around at that time. And if they kill me, okay. But I get my point proved. My point would be proved before I die. And that was all it meant to me.
Because he said that you were forced to lean back, which is something I imagine that Roy Jones didn't want somebody saying. So you're saying you would have talked to him about it, and he said that, oh, my bad, I didn't mean anything by it, because there's a bunch of different stories about how that went.
Well, first he was like, you know, it's just a song. I'm like, no, it ain't just a song. You know, but then when I said it, I guess he kind of understood me, because he was like, you know what, my bad, you know, it's cool, you know, we good, I won't do it no more. And it wasn't like, you know, like I said, I know he had guys with him that had guns. He was ready to defend himself, and I wasn't tripping about that. As long as I got him, I didn't care about the rest of the guys. They could have got me too, so it would have happened that way, and you got to bring it to get it sometime, but I was willing to die for it, so.
All right, wow. Okay, so he says in his song that your face looks like the devil, you're ready to fight, you're ready to die, and he's telling you, I got the terror squad behind me, they've got weapons, and you are literally ready to die.
He didn't tell me nothing. I already knew that when I came in the building. I knew the terror squad was there. I knew they was all, you know, weaponed up. I wasn't tripping. I already knew that. Okay, and?
What do you mean, and, Roy? I understand, but that it's still, all of it is crazy. All of it is nuts.
Yeah, when you're young, you do crazy things sometimes, and that was probably a crazy thing that I did, but, you know, for me, for what I stood for at the time, you know, it's like, I just didn't roll like that, you know. I didn't think that was right. I didn't think your friends do you like that, so.
You saw the fear in Fat Joe's eyes, didn't you? You saw it. You saw it. You still see it. Yeah,
it's
that's
not
an
like
answer.
that, you know.
He don't scare you easy.
We cool. Me and Fat Joe good friends now. We cool, so that's over with.
Roy, thank you for the time, sir. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. All right.
Understand this. Kids, you know Floyd Mayweather. He's been the best pound for pound for a long, unbroken time, right? In boxing. And then he put distance between himself and everyone else. He's like this and everyone else is below him. Floyd was in his prime when Roy was in Roy's prime for years and years and years. Not a single person on earth ever even wondered, is Floyd as good as Roy? You understand how good Roy Jones was? It's like when Jordan was in his prime and Shaq was coming up and no one ever asked, is Shaq as good as Jordan? Then the day Jordan retires, Shaq puts that same distance between him and everyone else. That's who Jordan was. That's who Roy was. He put distance between him and Floyd, like Floyd puts more distance even than Floyd puts between him and everyone else. Roy was the best I'd ever seen in person with my own eyes. They couldn't touch him.
With knockout power.
Just go look at old clips of Roy. I'm not talking about from 10 years ago. I'm talking about from 15 years ago. This is how good Roy was. Remember when Mike Tyson knocked out Michael Spinks?
Yeah.
Kids, this is the distant past. Everyone thought Mike Tyson, they wouldn't say it out loud, but he's going to be the greatest fighter ever. He's going to be better than Ali. He's going to be better than Sugar Ray Robinson. He's going to be the greatest ever. That's what people were thinking, and the old-timers wouldn't say it, but everyone was thinking it. If I told you on that night that there is an amateur junior middleweight who is never going to come close to really losing a fight, should won a gold medal, got ripped off, win titles at middleweight, super middleweight, jump up to light heavyweight, jump up to heavyweight,
against John Ruiz,
beat a top 5 heavyweight and one day open 2-1 to beat Mike Tyson, you would say that's not possible. You're describing the best fighter ever. That's how we perceived Roy Jones the night he beat John Ruiz. This guy may challenge Sugar Ray Robinson for the #1 pound-for-pound spot.
Was there someone that you met when you first met him where you're like, I can't even believe that I'm sitting there with Evander Holyfield or someone like that? Someone real famous where you couldn't believe you were actually being around them? Do you
I would
remember
have to say Roy Jones.
Roy Jones.
Because I never was like a big fanboy. I would always be like, oh, man, they just humans like me. But when I seen Roy for the first time, I was like, "Bo, that's Roy Jones Jr." Like, I met Floyd Mayweather, but this Roy Jones Jr., like,
yeah,
it was just crazy. And he was real cool, and I was just like, damn. I didn't want to be like all like shy and stuff. I was like, damn. Like, I met Sugar Ray Leonard when I was an amateur, and it didn't feel the same. It was just like, man, that's Sugar Ray Leonard.
Because it's a different era. Because it was you didn't watch him fight. Watching Roy Jones, man, when I was a kid, when he was in his prime, he would lead with a left hook. It was like more than a jab. He would just whip that left hook at dudes, and they didn't know what the fuck to do with that. That speed was preposterous.
So fast.
Woo! Roy was doing stuff to people that made you just go, wow. Like, he's not even doing the same thing they're doing.
Right.
He's on another dimension. He's a different record speed, you know? He was so fast. Like, Max Kellerman had this incredible rant once about just realizing how good Roy Jones was in his prime. It wasn't like he wasn't around great fighters, but they couldn't do shit to him.
Nah.
He was around world champions, but he was lighting them on fire.
Right.
It was crazy. What was the best years of his championship reign, but he was untouchable. 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 When he knocked out Virgil Hill with that body shot, wow. You're like, God damn.
One punch.
When he put his hands behind his back and still knocked down James Toney. I mean, when he dropped his hands like this, and James Toney does it too, and he leaps in and drops him.
With the left hook.
And that one dude he knocked out with his hands behind his back. Who was that dude?
Oh, I forgot.
When he was on the ropes.
Yeah. Put his hands behind his back. The dude moves forward and drops him and knocks him out. It's like, this is a movie scene.
Right.
This isn't real life. No one does that in real life. Roy Jones was having fun with people.
Yeah, he was.
He's having fun with people.
He was entertaining.
He was incredible how fast he was.
But like, I didn't met people like Roy. He's a fan of me.
It's amazing.
And it's like, dude, like, I'd be like so starstruck. It's like, man, I'm a fan of you.
And he's a fan of you.
You a fan of me. Wow. Like,
Jones was a strong favorite to win Olympic gold, but in front of a partisan Korean crowd supporting their man, Jones was to become the victim of one of the most outrageous decisions in boxing history.
Roy Jones building up a tremendous lead.
Roy Jones Jr. was, to me, the most dominant fighter I ever saw.
It is all over. Roy Jones.
Well, if he doesn't win the gold off this, then I think there's something rotten in Korea, because that is absolutely one of the most dominant things I've seen.
It was the worst decision in the history of amateur boxing.
Well, there it is.
An investigation later found the 3 judges who voted against Roy had been wined and dined by Korean officials. 2 were banned from judging for life.
The fact that you were outright robbed of a gold medal.
Weighs in at 155 pounds even. Please welcome Roy Jones Jr.
And Jones continues to headhunt in this opening minute of the 8th and final round. Yes, it is all over. Randy Newman stopping the bout, and the final minute.
Speed kill. You know, I know I'm the quicker of most of us, so I'm gonna beat most of them because I'm so much quicker.
Roy Jones Jr. is a
a phenom of the sport.
Referee Bill Connor is saying, are you all right? And then, are you sure you're all right? Roy Jones has stopped Ron Anderson.
He was able to do things that no other athlete and no other professional fighter has done before.
Just incredible talent.
And you were the most dominant fighter I ever saw. You and Mike Tyson early, but I thought you were more disciplined than Mike. Training schedule, regimen, your work ethic, your focus. You were just more driven and dialed in than Mike.
I'm going to ask you point blank, growing up as a young man, when you were 12, 13 years of age, was your life, for want of a better word, almost miserable?
Yes.
One senses in reading this article that the bulk of your young life was spent in the following manner: trying to do something, trying to do anything that would win the approval of your father, Big Roy.
He has not even broken a sweat coming into this opening round.
That's very correct. It was totally miserable.
Did that leave you with a certain killer instinct, a certain rage that now manifests itself when you step into a boxing ring?
This is over.
To the left hand, from down he goes. In stunning fashion, Roy Jones Jr. goes to 16-0 with 16 knockouts with the big left hook.
Okay, now let's go to the biggest punch you ever delivered. Who was it?
This guy named Art Sawano.
Art Sawano.
Yes, it was in Reno, Nevada.
Oh, boy.
Boom!
Holy.
Oh, my. Big right hand.
Is his head still attached?
Yeah, look at his ass.
Oh, my God.
He had a seizure.
That will finish it. Shades of the Jorge Baca fight for Roy Jones. His second straight first-round KO. All right, we just want to take a look at the end of the fight, Roy. You describe it.
Once upon a time, the man next to me, Roy Jones Jr., was universally considered the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world.
Dances, drops his hands, and
In fact, I guess it's an unofficial title, but you held that for a number of years, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Glenn Wolfe had a concrete jaw. Now it turns out he had a glass stomach. Or a glass liver. What star quality?
A chance to look at the star-crossed Olympic star of the Seoul Games in '88, Roy Jones Jr., as he guns for his first world championship against Bernard Hopkins. And there is the executioner symbol that accompanies Bernard Hopkins. Larry, there's so much talk about Roy Jones. Will this be the night that he stamps himself as a superstar in the sport?
Bernard Hopkins was unbeaten and very much the favorite to capture the vacant IBF middleweight title.
According to Punchstat numbers, Bernard Hopkins is landing a paltry 14% of his punches.
Scored the bout 116 to 112 for the winner by unanimous decision, and now the IBF middleweight champion of the world, Roy Jones Jr.
Well carved out, even at 166 pounds.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Inch for inch, pound for pound, the greatest fighter in the world today.
But again, Dodge Allen. This is the round James Toney got to Danny Garcia. Roy Jones goes to 25-0. That's his 22nd knockout.
One of the things I've observed about him is that he seems to be a young man with that rare combination of great power and great quickness inside a body that really wants to be a boxer.
Chess match, the speed, the power, just showing all of that. I mean, Roy's confidence was just amazing.
You know, Roy Jones surprised everybody. A lot of knockouts. He had a beautiful style.
who else do you know who did lose a round for like a 10-year stretch in a fight?
Straight left hand was spectacular. 3, 4, 5. A sensational one-shot, 6th round knockout.
Roy Jones Jr. disdains the BMWs, disdains the Ferraris. A very simple life pleases a Roy Jones Jr.
Boom, perfect timing.
Oh, and down goes Tate. Wow. It was an inside left. He's on the corner rope standing. Oh, Tate. That's it. His 6th career second-round knockout. Why are people so indecisive as to what is going to happen here? What's the reason?
3 words. Roy Jones Jr. We don't know up to this second whether he's a superstar or a fraud.
He moved up to super middleweight to challenge the unbeaten James Toney, a defining fight in the career of Jones.
James! Lights out! Toney! He's like a gambler who has collected a pile of chips slowly but surely. And now he's pushing all those chips into the table on one roll of the dice. His problem is that James Toney has been playing for high stakes before so often, he almost represents the house.
Showboating by Jones. You tempt fate, I think.
They ain't never seen nobody do the stuff that I do.
Champion of the world, Roy Jones Jr.
Roy Jones, I never saw a super middleweight throw 6, 7, 8 punch combinations like he throws. He's absolutely beautiful.
Now, it's got to be difficult to focus on this fight in the same manner in which you focused on James Toney and made Toney look absolutely pathetic in winning by decision.
Big right hand by Roy Jones. Another right hand by Roy Jones.
And down goes Bird. Down goes Bird. Knocked him out in 1 round.
The fight against Vinny Pazienza.
You all right? You all right?
Can't reach him. Just counter punch.
Then he threw a lot of punches at him, I think like over 60 punches. And for the first time in boxing history, didn't land a punch.
That's an astonishing statistic.
The battle of the undefeated 12 rounds for the WBC Light Heavyweight Championship of the world.
In your career, you were the first person to beat Roy Jones Jr.
Wearing the white trunks, black trim, he weighs 175 pounds. He is undefeated in 26 professional bouts. Montel Ice Griffin!
He was just frustrated, I think, with my style. And, you know, it is what it is.
It was a definite foul. We are being told that Roy Jones is going to be disqualified and will lose his title.
Roy's only loss up until the later part of his career was against Montel Griffin for disqualification. And sure enough, he came right back and just destroyed the guy.
15 feet across the ring.
You know, it's strange that Roy Jones would have that kind of power at that weight class.
What a left hook. Second knockdown of the round. And that's that. Jones gets his vindication via a first-round knockout. He couldn't have written for himself a more satisfying fight script than this one.
And I saw you knock a guy out with a rib shot, and I said that to you a second ago, and you said Virgil Hill.
I always felt like I'm really a legitimate super middleweight instead of a light heavyweight, but there's no challenges at the super middleweight, so I have to come up to light heavyweight and fight.
Right to the body, down Unheard of.
heavyweight title. I had to go back and recapture the light heavyweight title. So to do what I had set out to do, I had to have it.
Roy Jones is fighting actually as a middleweight because he's lost all of the muscles. He didn't fall into in the light heavyweight division.
I was horribly weak, and he was a different type of fighter, different. Just his everything about it was different for me.
I mean, the way he was able to transcend weight classes and carry power, he might be the only guy to ever do it like that.
Antonio Tarver's in the fight.
For the winner by majority decision, and once again recognized as the universally accepted light heavyweight champion of the world, Roy Jones Jr.
And hit a guy and knock him out. They ain't never seen nobody do the stuff that I do.
Well, Roy found the trick for knocking him out. He put his hands behind his back.
The greatest part about his game is not only his speed and his power, but this guy hardly gets hit.
Right hand slash, and down goes Sosa. That's the first time in his career. Here we go.
No other guy ever turned professional as a junior middleweight and won a heavyweight title in the history of boxing. So they always talk about pound for pound. I don't have to talk. Nobody ever did what I did, all right?
Down goes Hall.
Every punch is being blocked by Roy Jones.
Third knockdown of the night.
Winner, a TKO victory, and still the reigning and defending undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world, Roy Jones Jr.
You know, it's kind of hard for me to really see my future in the next 10 years. I'm hoping to see it with a house or two in Russia, with a few gyms, training a few world champions, still raising my chickens, still traveling the world, no coronavirus, and maybe another few rap albums. Just enjoying life, you know, trying to enjoy life, but also be a guide to help people better negate their lives and help people who are lost to find their ways, because that's what I love doing. For anybody who's out there that's aspiring to be a young boxer, there's a few things you need to do if you really want to box. First thing is you have to find out who God is, because God is your creator. With God, all things are possible. Without God, not much is gonna happen for you, trust me. Second thing you have to figure out is how bad do you want to box. You have to be willing to kill or die almost if you really want to be a professional boxer. Now, if you want to be an amateur boxer, you ain't got to kill or die. It's just about outpointing the guy and winning. But if you want to be a professional boxer, you got to be willing, ready, and able to put it all on the line. Third thing, if you're going to box, find you a trainer who understands boxing, who knows how to separate different personalities, different styles, different DNAs, who knows how to use what God gave you. If your trainer can't teach you how to use what God gave you, meaning whether it's speed, whether it's power, whether it's reach, whether it's shortness, no matter what it is, whatever you are, genetically, a trainer has to be able to bring the best you out of you. Not just be a trainer that just train people. He got to know what it is about you that makes you you, and he got to be able to take that to the max. If you put those three things together, you should have no problem being the best that you possibly can be.